Sheriff's on deck.
Go, Addie, sit on down. Make yourselves comfortable. How's our members of the media doing? Everybody good? Long time no see for some of y'all. Hey, Scott.
Hello.
Listen, I wanted to get you guys together because, you know, with all the news that's going on revolving around the SRO program and the decisions that are made by the school board, I know that you folks have some questions and some concerns. And I know if I was sitting in your shoes, I'd be going, you know, how does that impact me? What does this mean for me? And I know that the relationships that y'all have established with these kids is strong, and some of y'all are so invested in what's going on in the lives of these kids and keeping them safe that I'm sure in this crowd, this size, that at least one or two, or maybe even more of y'all even considering, hey, do I leave the sheriff's office and go towards the police department at the school board? And I'm here to tell you, if you decide to go that route, I understand. I don't want you sneaking around thinking, you know, well, I have to go behind the sheriff's back or somebody's back because they're going to frown on the fact that I want to go this way. Listen, I have established some friendships with these kids in the school, so I know that the fact that y'all are there all the time, your relationships are probably even stronger than mine. You got Deputy Ford posting pictures all the time with him and these kids, and I know you at Bannerman, you've kind of turned that thing around, and the list goes on and on and on at your different schools. And we do the sheriff's straight talks. That's not going to stop, regardless of what happens with the school board and if they stand for police department. We're still going to visit the junior high schools. We're still going to go out there and play with them kids at the elementary school. In fact, a funny story, y'all just going to have to bear with us. The kindergartners over at Keystone, I got word today. They said, hey, when's the sheriff going to come back? And I'm like, okay, I'll make sure I go back out there. And they said, bring that other student with you. The other student was Chris Padgett. I'm not making
Who, Chris?
So the kindergartners think that Chris Padgett, the PIO, is a student, an elementary school student. And I thought that was cute, and I promised them that, I said, when we come back out there, I'll make sure I bring that other student with us. So you say, well, what happens to us if the school board stands up a police department? And I keep saying if. It's not a matter of when, it's if. And nothing has been etched in stone. And I know they've started down this path to stand up a police department, but that's a long time coming. And, at the end of the day, the cavalry's in this room, and the cavalry wears a green uniform. And that may rub some people wrong, but when people call 911, they're not calling the school board police department, they're calling Clay County Sheriff's Office. So when somebody needs a hero to respond, then that's going to be you men or women. And when it comes to things that are happening at our schools, listen, whether you're assigned to a school or not assigned to a school, there's nothing that prevents you as a member of the Clay County Sheriff's Office from going on school property and interacting with the kids. You've established a relationship. These kids trust you. Now I'm gonna fast forward. Let's move forward into the future. There is a school board police department, and an individual police officer gets assigned in the school that you're currently assigned in. Y'all walking with me? If it was me, I would make sure that that individual transitioned well into that school, not to hurt that individual and not point out the troubled kids or things that would be important to know if you were just coming into a school system. I'd want that person to land softly and help facilitate the transition in that person. That's that scenario. Another scenario is, what if something happens in the school board decides they don't want to go that route? What if the whole landscape changes in the status quo? So what I'm doing, I'm looking for alternatives to this whole thing, and I'll get into that in a minute. As it currently stands, the school board is on a trajectory based on their majority vote to have their own police department. Whether or not they can execute that in 5 months, 6 months, that remains to be seen. If they can't, then there's going to have to be an alternative solution to keep the kids safe until the meantime. Well, there will come a time and place when the SRO program, if going on this trajectory, is absorbed into operations at the sheriff's office, functioning in something other than an SRO capacity, whether that be a patrol, whether that be in community affairs, wherever that is. The director of operations is currently looking at options to absorb y'all back into the fold in operations. Y'all with me? And you know, I don't keep anything hidden from y'all. Y'all know you can always ask questions of me, and I'm always a straight shooter with you. I'm working another alternative for the school board to consider, and that will take the input of the BCC. And here's, for those who are watching, here's what the premise is this. There's 12 months in a year. In a school year, you folks are only in the schools for a certain portion of that year. So the idea of the district paying for 12 months of service when you're not in the schools for 12 months, some would say, why force them to pay for services that aren't being provided for 12 months? Does that make sense? So if the other portion of the year you're functioning in some other capacity, either in operations, directly out in patrol, or in community affairs, or in some summer program, that's a county function. And some would argue that the county has a responsibility to fund that piece up. Well, any contribution made from the county towards that program would decrease the numbers that have been projected for the district, which would probably change the course of the direction that they're currently heading. So that's still being explored. Feel free to ask me questions. You know, ignore the fact that the media is here. Y'all know how we always do it. If you got a burning question on your heart, and I'll do it, this is no different. You ask that question, you can interrupt, just like we always do, and you can ask that question. Or I'll just ramble sometimes. But I wanted to make sure that I met with y'all and let y'all know, listen, I support y'all 100%. You probably never imagined that as a school resource officer or in that area, that you would become the hot topic of the county. But here we are in 2019, and you are the hot topic of the county. And the reason why you're the hot topic of the county is because the voters voted that the district be given a 1 millage increase and getting those resultant dollars to staff up or fund or underwrite a school resource program, or if you will, to have sworn bodies in the schools protecting the children. I think it's rubbing this idea of the school board standing up their own police department is rubbing some members of the community wrong, because they were under the idea that those schools would be staffed up by folks who wear green uniforms. Now understand this, the school district is well within their rights to stand up a police department. The only issue I ever had with it was they're trying to do it too fast. I don't want to see these kids getting in a position where, because somebody's trying to do something hastily, you know, we put our kids in harm's way. I won't rest well with that. There's so many things that can be discussed that are short-sighted, and I'm not here to bash the decision of the school board. I'm not here to bash the superintendent. Listen, y'all might think after hours we all hate each other's guts, but we don't. They made a business decision. This is a business decision. When we're not functioning in our roles, in our elected capacity, the majority of us are pretty much friends, if you will. We get along just fine outside of our roles. But when we're performing our function as elected officials, I have to do what's right by the constituency that I serve to keep them safe and secure. And you make up that piece. The school board makes decisions in areas that they're responsible for, and the superintendent and any other elected official the same way. Those are our jobs. But aside from the job, not unlike you, we have relationships as well. So don't think that we're pitted against each other and I have some animosity against a school board member, or I have some animosity against the superintendent. We get along just fine. The majority of us. It's just, is what it is. When it comes to our professional side, you know, we may cross paths on an issue and we may bump heads on an issue, but I like to think that overall we're all trying to accomplish the same thing. And in this particular case, keeping our kids safe is the ultimate mission. You know, if there's a police department, I think their mission would be to keep the kids safe, and that does not counter our mission in keeping the kids safe. You know, those kids are a demographic of the county, and it's our job to keep the entire county safe. And those kids are just as much a part of that county as any adult or teenager. Makes sense? Any questions so far? None at all? No concerns? You sure you don't have one? You're giving me that look. That look that you normally give when you're just about to throw out a big question. Let's go.
Considering that budgets play everything, okay, the county and the school board worked a budget to hire extra officers and put SROs into the schools. How is that going to affect the sheriff's office budget when the sheriff's office has to absorb all the SROs back in?
Good question. And for anybody who didn't hear that, the question was, if the SRO program as we know it is disbanded and those employees have to be absorbed back into the sheriff's office operation, what cost or impact does that have to the budget? It's less than $2 million, more than $1 million, around $1.9 million as it stands.
What will it cause? Job cuts?
No, we're not cutting jobs. We have vacancies to fill. We have 47 vacancies to fill. There are, if you look at the ratio of law enforcement to 1,000 citizens here in Clay County, we're currently at 1.4. We need to be at 1.72 just to meet the state average. So, just so happens that the number is 47 for us to meet the state average. So we have room, we have capacity. It's not like you would have anything to do if you got pulled back into the operations piece. We got plenty of work.
I understand that.
Anything else? Because when I'm done asking y'all questions, I'm gonna turn this podium to the real question askers. And they got tons of them. And they're chomping at the bit, so I'm trying to give y'all first bite of the apple. Question? Listen, there may come a time when something happens on school property, whether you're there or as an SRO, or you're out patrol, community affairs, a detective, or anything else. My expectation is this: you don't look at school property as if it's somebody else's jurisdiction. We have a duty to keep our children safe, and I don't care what capacity you're functioning in. If you, by God, have a gun on your hip and something is happening in or around one of those school campuses, and there is a need to go be the hero, I'm expecting you to be the hero. If you have to go take care of business by yourself, I expect you to take care of business by yourself. The rest of us are coming, but you do whatever you have to do to keep our kids safe. We'll worry about all that other stuff after the fact. Is that fair enough?
Yes, sir.
That hasn't changed, and it doesn't matter to me who's in charge of what. The help would be welcome. If it's hitting the fan at a school, trust me, they'll be glad to see you. Questions? Concerns? You sure? All right. Concerns?
You answered the big question, sir.
You got a little one?
No, sir.
You're normally counter-vocal. You're normally the first one out to shoot. You sure?
I don't have any questions on this side of the coin. I'm curious how they're gonna fill 47 positions in 5 months when we who have been established for a lot longer and do this a lot better have been behind the 8 ball like every other agency trying to keep the position staffed. I don't know how they think they're gonna fill 47 positions in 5 months.
Yeah. Recruiting's gonna be difficult. Not impossible, but very, very difficult. And if they, being the district, get to a point where they're not going to fill the vacancies that they will have, then they're gonna have to look at alternative solutions. Real quick, can somebody make it get cooler in here? Everybody's trying to. Any more
What do
questions?
you think those alternative solutions might be?
A prudent person would say they reach out to the sheriff's office. Give us some help here. We're willing partners, just as willing as y'all are.
At what point does that become a jurisdictional issue?
No jurisdiction. You still are, if you wear this uniform, you're a member of the sheriff's office. You don't work for the school board police department, you work for the sheriff. You're a deputy.
Sheriff, can you clarify something for us?
Sure.
So the
All
business,
right, there it is.
the business decision statement,
Yes.
we understand inside the room, because we were grasping the whole video about what you were relaying. There's a few people wanting to know what that reference was
The business decision?
about the business decision. Obviously, everyone's saying, you know, our children are not a business decision. You've made that
Yes.
very clear that they are not.
The children, for those who ask that question, are the priority of the sheriff's office, just like they're the priority for you at home. When I say a business decision was made, the school board made a business decision based on a financial number to break their relationship, their financial relationship with the sheriff's office, to go a different route to keep our kids safe. And I say our kids because the men and women in this room right now have children in the schools, just like the parents out there have kids in the school. So we have a vested interest in keeping our kids safe. That's what I meant by business decision. You can't put, in my opinion, you can't put a dollar amount on the life of a kid. So, you know, I was one of those people who voted yes to provide a $1 million increase to put $10 million plus in the coffers of the school district. I was under the impression, I personally was under the impression, that some of that funding, or the majority of that funding, at least half of it, was going to be worked to underwrite having the sheriff's office employees and or a combination of Green Cove Springs PD and Orange Park PD to do that, not a school board police department.
Sheriff, I just want to clarify something. So the school resource officers, will they be absorbed back into the sheriff's office duties to help fill the sheriff's office need?
Yes, and guess what? Even if I didn't have the vacancies, I would still absorb them. See, here's for those who don't understand, the school district funds the school resource officer program. If they do not fund the school resource officer program and make a decision that they don't need the services of the sheriff's office in that capacity, then I have to absorb those salaries back into the sheriff's office budget. And so that means for me, if we hadn't anticipated that happening, then I go to the Board of County Commissioners with a finite number and say, I need this much added to my budget because I did not anticipate the relationship being severed by the school board with the sheriff's office, and I need these extra dollars added to my budget to supplement this unforeseen influx of employees back
Sheriff?
into my role.
Sheriff, could you clarify what you were saying? Are you gonna offer a new plan to the county commission to?
Yes,
What do you
so
mean?
here's the idea, and I'll just use simple percentages for those in the audience, not to insult your intelligence, but I just live in a world of keeping numbers real round and simple. So let's say, if we can say that these employees right here are in the schools, I'll just say 70% of the year. So it'd be safe to assume that the expectation would be for the district to fund 70% of their salary and associated costs. 30% that they would be on county time, it'd be safe to say the expectation would be for the county to, if for lack of better terms, make a contribution of 30% of their salaries and associated costs to make up the entire 100%.
School board members made a lot of accusations the other day who voted in favor of this. One, that the sheriff hasn't really been willing to foot money in this process. Also, that the sheriff plans to decertify the SROs on October 1st. Could you clarify those two things?
And it does take a whole bunch of clarification or rocket science. I'll start with the first one. So I just expressed the first piece, the sheriff doesn't have the latitude. I can't tell these men and these women, I'm gonna reduce your salary so I can help that fit somebody else's narrative or agenda. The cost of their salaries are the cost of their salaries. The cost of a vehicle is the cost of a vehicle. The numbers are hard numbers. And so what a lot of school board members don't understand is that in other counties, the Board of County Commissioners make a contribution to underwrite the cost of the SRO program. That wasn't the case in Clay County. So the number was the number. Does that make sense, Scott? So on the piece of decertifying the guardians, in April of 2018, myself, the superintendent of schools, his CFO, his general counsel, and his director of operations, and some members of my team met at Sheriff's Office headquarters to have a conversation about how to staff up and be able to afford the SRO program and what that would look like this current year. And I said, understand this, the Guardians is a short-term solution to a long-term problem. Once you, the district, and this is me talking to the superintendent, I said, understand, once you have the funding to staff up sworn bodies in all the schools, I'm going to decertify the Guardians. The superintendent was told, the CFO, director of operations, and their general counsel. The only people who were missing from that meeting were the school board. So if he being the superintendent, didn't convey that to his team, the school board, then this would have caught them by surprise. And they probably are operating under the assumption that this was a knee-jerk reaction in response to some decision that they made. This was a conversation that happened back in April of last year before the direction that they're going was even something that was publicly considered.
People who may be watching this not totally understand the differences. They just see sheriff on one side, school board on the other.
Mhm.
If heaven forbid there's a school shooting,
Yes,
will there be jurisdictional fights over that? Probably all hands on deck.
it'd be all hands on deck. You just heard me publicly, in front of everybody in the viewing audience, give them and anybody who wears this uniform a charge or commission. I don't care what the jurisdiction is. I'll give you a good example. If Orange Park Junior High School had a problem, that's the town of Orange Park. That's the town of Orange Park, yes. If we get wind of the fact that there's an active shooter or anything going on that's putting kids in harm's way in the town of Orange Park, we're not asking for permission to go into their jurisdiction to save lives. We're going in their jurisdiction to save lives. We'll talk about who's writing reports and doing after actions later, but lives will get saved. Who gets credit doesn't matter to me as long as our kids are protected.
Even if we go into this situation, they can't fill all the positions and this continues to be a political fight.
Yes.
That won't make a difference.
No, that won't make a difference at all. By law, the district, have to have sworn folks in those schools or guardians. I've taken guardians off the table because there's enough money to put sworn bodies in there. And sworn bodies is what the citizens want, and sworn bodies is what the citizens will get. Either they're gonna get school board police officers, Green Cove Springs and Orange Park police officers, or they're gonna get Clay County Sheriff's Office deputies.
And can you
I don't
say,
think they want anything less than that.
can you say why you weren't at the sheriff's announcement the other day that he had said you had a prior engagement, but other school board members had said, we don't see anyone from the sheriff's office, but they had
Well,
other agencies?
If I was able to be there, I probably wouldn't have been there because I don't support the direction that they're going in. They're standing up their police department. I think the Clay County Sheriff's Office can provide a better service. Here's the reason why. The majority of us live in Clay County. The people that they're recruiting probably won't be coming from Clay County because the majority of folks who live in Clay County who want to get in law enforcement are either going to come to the Clay County Sheriff's Office for employment, Green Cove Springs, or Orange Park PD. They're certainly not going to wait for somebody to stand up a police department for them to go be employed in law enforcement. That's one. If something happens on school property, something major, and a school board police officer is tasked with dealing with that issue, if it moves off school property, it just moves out of their jurisdiction. I make it even simpler. If they moved across to the other side of the sidewalk, that's not school property. They can't take police action because they don't have jurisdiction on the other side of that sidewalk. These men and women who wear these green uniforms, they got jurisdiction in the entire county. That continuity of operation or continuity of security and control, that falls well within the realm of wearing green uniforms. We can take care of business on school property. We can take care of business in Keystone Heights, Orange Park, Middleburg, Green Cove Springs, Lemon Island, Oakleaf, everywhere in the county that you can think of. School board police officers can't do that.
And the plan you're speaking of, what happens next? Are you going to the county commission to present this, going to the school board to present this?
So, It requires input from both. It would require buy-in from both entities. You know, I'd love to be able to underwrite the entire thing on my budget as a standalone, but I can't. I can't do it. And I'm not talking about the sheriff's office being in high schools and junior high schools only. I'm talking about what the people want. What the people have been talking about on social media and what the people have been talking about in the meetings is having the sheriff's office in all the schools. So when I say underwriting a program, I'm talking about underwriting the sheriff's office being in all the schools, minus the jurisdiction of Green Cove Springs and Orange Park.
Sheriff, I was just wondering, so when you said that, you know, you have to absorb all the SROs back into the sheriff's office, the 1.9 million you'd present to the Board of Commissioners, what if they don't approve that?
Oh, then we have to cut the fat somewhere in
So
services,
there
but
would have to be job cuts then.
not gonna be job cuts.
Okay.
We'll trim the fat, we're not trimming people.
Where would you trim it, you think?
Wherever I can get it,
But it wouldn't be people.
absolutely would not.
So, and I know right now the sheriff's office is short 40 to 50 deputies, is that right?
47.
So is there a silver lining to this, that would you want to turn your SROs into deputies? Is that a conversation that you've had?
They're already deputies.
Or, I'm sorry, well, that's right. I mean, what is the silver?
Not unlike the definition that the school district uses,
Mhm.
they use SROs loosely. And I think they mean police officers of the school board. SROs are members of the sheriff's office or Green Cove Springs Police Department or Orange Park PD. SSOs, school safety officers, would be police officers who work directly for the district, the ones who don't exist right now. And guardians are the third piece, which the school board, the school district calls SSOs. I know it's confusing, but there's three. Guardians, school district employees who are not law enforcement personnel, who have been trained by sheriff's office personnel in the proper application of use of force and the proper application of use of deadly force and discretionary shooting, and a host of other training topics, who are then certified by the sheriff to carry a gun on school property. But they are employees of the schools. Y'all with me so far? And if you're out in the audience, you shake your head yes. Secondly, there's SSOs that you hear the school district talking about. School safety officers. That would be school board police officers. And then there are school resource officers like these men and women who are sitting right here.
So what do you practically do? Do you show up at the school board, next county commission meeting and ask for this or present this? Is that your plan?
So, you know, time is of the essence. We would all agree. Because, you know, for me, if we were going to, let's say, everything, in a perfect world, there was funding on both sides of the fence, and the BCC said, all right, we'll take care of this part, the district takes care of this part, sheriff, hire your people, we gotta hire those people, train them, and get them in place by the beginning of the school year. It's gonna be a hard task, but not as hard as standing up at the police department, I guarantee you that.
I guess I asked because last time I think, if I heard right, you were at the school board meeting, they didn't even let you speak. So how do you plan to present this to a board that wasn't hearing from you?
Well, you know, it appears that the board is more concerned about numbers because they said we're trying to be good financial managers. Well, if I present them a number that's lower than any number they've been presented, a prudent person would think that they'd go for that offer.
And Sheriff, you said this was a business decision on both sides, well, by the school district to do this.
Yes.
Is there any part of you, though, that is taking this personally?
No.
No.
Don't take it personally at all. Because, listen, whether they have a police department or not, the sheriff's office still has responsibility in the county to keep the citizens safe. And at any time, we can step on the school property and take care of business. The jurisdiction may belong to them, but the county belongs to me. It is what it is.
Do you expect to have a good relationship with the school department if it is up and running and the chief who we met, Mr.
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes, we would have a great relationship with Mr. Wagner, who is resigning. He just resigned his job with the sheriff's office. So we've known former Lieutenant Wagner for many, many years. And, you know, I think he'll try to make sure that we have a very good partnership. We certainly won't do anything to hamper his success and the success of the soon-to-be, if it is soon-to-be, police department.
And sure, just going back kind of, and I'm sorry I misspoke, I know they're
Sure.
deputies, but I was saying, is it somewhat of a silver lining, the fact that, you know, you are short deputies, response times are a little higher than you would like them to be, and absorbing them back into your department this way, would that help with that?
Oh, it certainly would help. You know what would help even better? If I could just get 47 bodies paid for by the BCC, which is about $5.6 million outright, but I would not want to be a burden to the taxpayers like that. That's why there's a plan in place to slowly and incrementally phase those bodies in, not these men and women. In a perfect world, the silver lining would be this. In a perfect world, the elected officials will listen to the people who put them in office. In a perfect world, if those people say we want the Clay County Sheriff's Office to protect our kids, then those people who control the purse strings would say, all right, we'll do what the citizens who put us in office want, and that is to make sure that the men and women of the Clay County Sheriff's Office protect their kids. That's simple logic. And I know there are people out there in the viewing audience going, yeah, the sheriff gets it. Well, sometimes people don't get it.
So you're saying the school district superintendent, you don't think they get it?
I'm not saying that. I said people don't get it. So a prudent person would say the things that I said. I guarantee you all of them voted yes for a 1 millage increase. And that 1 millage increase produces about $10 million plus dollars, plus or minus a few dollars, over the course of 4 years. I'll say this, our initial proposal, if you will, or quote, if you will, back last year was about $5.6 million, or it was $5.6 million for the sheriff's office to take over all the schools, not including the municipality. I mean, municipalities weren't even included into that number. Once you introduce the municipalities factor them into the number, that number goes down. So consider your 1 millage increase of $10 million, just use that $10 million figure. If half of that was supposed to be earmarked for the school resource officer program, then that means there's $5 million left over. You scratch your head, I'll scratch mine too. What is going to happen to that other $5 million? It's operational expenses, undefined, because Lord knows I have no idea what those operational expenses are. But all I know is this, if we can present a package that's approved by the BCC and the school board that is lower than any projected number that they've seen, there's going to be not only $5 million left over, there'll be other millions left over. And if they're good stewards of taxpayers' dollars, then they would move some of those millions off to reserves, and then you could extend the 4 years of this expiring millage increase. You can move it out to a decade. You want to see how I get to that number? I know some of y'all are going, how does he get into a decade? Let's just suppose that the costs, the money subtracted from the millage increase minus the $5 million. Just put that off to the side. Let's say it's less than $5 million, because let's not forget, about $2 million of those $2 million comes from the state every year. So the school district gets about $2 million from the state for safe school dollars. That's not the 1 millage increase. So the district is playing with more than 10 million. They're playing with 12 plus million because they get 2 million from the state. Y'all with me so far? In the audience, y'all are doing like this. So if I presented a number, let's say $4 million to run the entire thing, 2 million from the state, 2 million from that 1 millage increase, that would leave $8 million on the table from the 1 millage increase. If they just took $2 or $3 million and put that to the side and spent the $5 million in operational expenses over the course of 4 years, you're talking $12 million. And if we're pulling off of that, $2 million at a time, that's 6 more years. 6 plus 4, in my simple logic, is 10. 10 years is called a decade, and in a decade, you know what? Who knows what the political and financial landscape of Clay County would look like? There'd be money flowing everywhere.
Do you think they put the millage increase on the ballot intentionally to do something like you're alleging, to maybe make some extra money on it for the district?
No, you know, whatever their operational expenses are, I don't know. They didn't tell anything to tell me as a taxpayer, but I can tell you this. If they said they needed a 1 millage increase and they needed it for school safety and operational expenses, then you gotta take them at face value. School safety and operational expenses, whatever those expenses are. The district knows and I trust them.
Sheriff, so people are asking, besides the fact that the school board initiating their own police, what we've had some parents and citizens bring up is, once those police officers are in the school, what about everything else that the sheriff's office has resources for currently, such as canines, such as fleet maintenance, such as all those type of things that we have built over the last 160 years? There are parents concerned that, okay, so the police officers get in the school, and that's good, that protects the children, but what about all the behind the scenes things that make up the Clay County Sheriff's Office 600 members, where not even half of our 600 are just the patrol deputies and so forth? So parents are curious, where's that come into play, if you can answer on that?
Maybe that's the operational expenses that the school district was talking about. There are supportive roles that don't wear uniforms. There are certain functions in law enforcement that aren't sworn police officers or sworn deputies. These things come at a cost. The school district can either enter into what they call interlocal agreements and get some of those duties offset by relationships with existing law enforcement entities, such as the County Sheriff's Office, Green Cove Springs, or Orange Park PD, or stand their own piece of that up in their agency. Any more questions? Any questions over here? I'll end with this. And I mean, I know this is long-winded, but it's important that we get this information out. A couple things I want you to remember. One, the Sheriff's Office is not at odds with the school board or the school district or the superintendent. That's first and foremost. We all have a responsibility to keep our kids safe and to keep each other safe, if you will. And if for one moment or 1 second, any person thinks that Clay County has somehow been weakened and that you can commit crimes on our school campuses, yeah, that dog don't hunt in Clay County, because it still stands. You probably need to stop what you're doing if you're considering that. Don't even come into Clay County if you're considering that. By God, you will see a green uniform, and we will come get you. And you take that how you take it. But this ain't the face of somebody who's joking. When it comes to keeping our kids safe, this ain't the place to come commit crimes. Not Clay County. Take it somewhere else. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for coming, and thank y'all for what you do. I'll keep y'all posted on this other stuff as it unfolds. I'll take care.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good seeing you.
I'm feeling the strain. I'm feeling it up.
You're live.
I can do it. I'm on live. I'm old.